Welcome. I'm Brendan Moore, a graduate student at the University of New Orleans. And today I'll be talking about Murrells Inlet as part of our Earth and Environmental Science Coastal Geomorphology class. Murrells Inlet is a pretty interesting location. I'm first going to go over the location, some of the changes that it's seen throughout the last 100 years, and the dynamic processes that have contributed to that. I'll then go over several issues that the site is facing and propose solutions on how to address it. So let's first go over the location. Murrells Inlet is an inlet along the coast of South Carolina, about 20 miles north Georgetown, about 15 miles southwest of Myrtle Beach. So Myrtle Beach, as we know popularly, is a popular tourist location, and it's right in the middle of Georgetown, South Carolina, and Myrtle Beach. The mean temperature is about 65 degrees Fahrenheit, and I gave some of the coordinates as well as the minimum elevation, which is minus 73 feet. Now, the inlet's main existence is due to the tidal currents generated by the ocean tidal height variation. It generates this ebb and flood currents that transport the tidal prism of 253 million CU feet, and that flows through the inlet during the tidal cycle. What you see on the screen now is how the inlet has changed and shifted over time. You'll notice that back in 1872, there was really more of a spit, a sort of finger-like formation that was forming. You see on the left side. And that spit actually changed direction. One thing that's very interesting about this Murrells Inlet coast is that there's bidirectional flow. Sometimes sediment moves southward and sometimes it moves northward. For example, there were some interesting studies that showed that between 1980 and 1984, it moved southerly, but then it moved northernly in the late 80s. So as you can tell, by 1926, the inlet shifted from that south right position to the north position, and then changed again in 1934, and even had another inlet created in 1943, before we have the sort of modern day structure of it in 1966. And what happened is, we're gonna understand the migration a little bit more. So it migrated north to south with this recurved spit that fed from the beach on the left, and some sand, moved shoreward. But you can see some of that migration if you look between 1950, how it sort of moved and ebbed to a sort of modern day formation. But this is where we stepped in. In 1977, there was a project that was undertaken, and the Army Corps of Engineers did a lot of research around this. The conditions of the inlet produced very difficult and dangerous navigational environment. If you try to take a boat up in there, it would get damaged from running aground or having to wait for high tides in order to navigate the inlet. And there were a bunch of economic studies that indicated, a group of economic studies that indicated that there'd be great economic value to the region if it was used by charter fishing craft. And so within 3 years, by 1980, the construction was completed of a rubble jetty system. There's a northern jetty and a southern jetty. These extend outward. And it provided a major new habitat in the area as well. So there were lots of effects of this jetty creation. Some of the issues that arose, because it's now currently a tourist hotspot and vastly visited, is that it had effects on urbanization. And I'm going to go over 3 of those effects briefly. One is there ended up being an increase in PAHs, which is polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. And these are byproducts of decomposition. So when an organism dies, and the average total concentration reported for Murrells Inlet was much higher compared to the northern inlet sites. Again, most of South Carolina coast has various inlets. And so when something really sticks out in terms of the chemistry being different after some of these human urbanizations and interventions. That's a sort of sign that things can become very bad for the habitat, or at least introduce things that we might want to correct in terms of our involvement. The total pH levels in both water and sediment in Murrells Inlet have historically been higher than those found around the estuaries, estuarine habitats. Another issue is fecal runoff from the land. There's a really interesting set of reports that came out in 2014 and 2015 that supported that there was lots of fecal coliform levels that were significantly higher around Murrells Inlet. And here you can see the inlet on the screen as it goes back into other places. I'll actually be staying here over the summer for a while, so I'll actually get to see this close up. And this suggests that storm runoff from the land is an important transport agent. There are also higher concentrations of chemicals. Besides PAH, there are higher nitrates, fecal, as I mentioned, and copper concentrations. We also have to be concerned about rapid sea level rise. By 2060, there's going to be substantial losses in those marshes behind the barrier protection, and potentially, not just noticeable, but very substantial losses by 2100, with just a moderate 4-level sea rise. So what's the solution? One is to have discharge point strategies. So we can create basins for the runoff, and we can have strategic ways of removing the bacteria. And, there's evidence that this fecal matter isn't just a matter of taste for people. It's affecting the oysters and various wildlife in the region. And another is a Murrells Inlet systems approach, where we recognize that nature impacts everything, natural and people-wise and economy-wise. So the Coastal Carolina University has done an excellent job of approaching this from a systems level approach, where we look at everything that's affected. And then we set up reasonable targets. This is one, for example, on addressing climate change related hazards and natural disasters that might happen in the area. So there's some interesting reports on that. And I have a variety of resources cited. And what's interesting is you'll see the same names pop up, because Coastal Carolina University is very involved. A lot of their graduate students are very involved in Murrells Inlet, and a lot of research studies around them there. And I believe that the systems approach is the best way to address it. One issue that might arise is the cost and the time. We have to move very quickly in order to protect Murrells Inlet. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation, this quick little 8-minute presentation, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.